Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 4 of GT Masters, the review series for, of course, the GT class race cars, both fictional and real, of Gran Turismo 6. And in this particular episode we're featuring a car which I really like, to be honest. It's a severely underappreciated model from what I've seen, and it's a car which for some reason a lot of people seem to have a bad opinion of, and to be completely honest, I don't understand why. It's the fictional, or Polyphony Digital Original, as they like to call it, Mazda RX-8 LM, or Le Mans, race car. And I think, first of all, it's a real shame that a car like this doesn't really exist in real life. The closest thing to it that I've seen, at least, is Mad Mike's Drift RX-8, or perhaps, I believe there was a Nürburgring 24-hour race entering RX-8, but if I remember correctly, that car looked virtually stock. I don't think there's ever really been a full-on, wide-body kitted, extreme racing RX-8. There may be one that I'm not aware of, but like I said, I've never seen one. And I think that's a real shame, because the RX-8 is a widely loved performance model and a truly honourable successor to the legendary RX-7. Now, the RX-8, of course, is a lot more soft, I think is the best word to describe it, than the RX-7. It's more family focused, it's more focused on comfort and everyday practicality, whereas the RX-7 was just a full-on pure sports car. So the RX-8 had a lot to live up to, because the RX-8 is to this day a massively, massively loved model. It's my personal, probably favourite Japanese car of all time, the RX-7, especially the FD. So the RX-8 had a lot to live up to, and I think it did it pretty well. As a race car, you can feel the difference. I would say overall it's, technically speaking, inferior to the RX-7 LM race car, but you'd probably expect that, and it's kind of unfair to compare the two, because although they are both LM spec machines, they're almost not even in the same kind of class. The RX-7 feels more like a super GT machine, whereas the RX-8 almost feels more like a touring car, to be honest. It has that more touring car look to it. It has the softer, more forgiving handling, less power to deal with. Now, speaking of power, it's powered by, as you'd expect, a rotary engine, and it's also sporting that iconic Renesis livery, like the massively popular, widely loved 787B, I should say, not RX-7. And the performance that it gets from its power is very good. Now, the rotary engine is one of my favourite engines of all time, and another one of my favourites, in fact my favourite combustion engine, is the gas turbine. And the funny thing is, gas turbines and rotary engines share some surprising things in common. They're very high revving, they work on a very minimal amount of movement, they have very few moving parts, and also, most importantly in the case of this car, they actually give you more performance than their on-paper spec would lead you to expect. So for instance, in the case of this car, it puts out 708 horsepower fully tuned, which certainly isn't bad, but is no way near the top of this series class. However, the performance that 708 horsepower can give you is actually the equivalent of some 800 or 900 horsepower GT cars that will be featured in the series. So for instance, the Lister Storm has far more power, far more torque, but this car still has a very similar kind of top speed, because the performance that it gives you from that power is much better than it would suggest just purely on paper. Now, of course, this car has a weight advantage over cars like the Lister Storm, weighing in at 1100 kilos, but to be fair, weight has a very, very little effect on top speed. People think, or people seem to think, that it does, but it really doesn't. The Veyron weighs almost 2 tons and was the fastest car in the world. Weight does have an effect, but it doesn't have a major effect on top speed. It affects acceleration a lot more. In fact, in some cases, it can actually improve top speed because it makes the car more stable. So you can't say that the Lister Storm has an advantage there because it's heavier. You can't say that this car has the advantage either because weight has very little advantage to top speed. yet with less power, significantly less in fact, it's just as quick. And that's the great thing about rotaries. The RX-7 and this RX-8 go beyond the raw spec. Now, I've heard it said when I've brought this car out in lobbies that people think, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, that it's not a very good race car. I don't get why they think that, to be completely honest. It has, as far as I'm concerned, brilliant handling. It's pinpoint. It does exactly what you want it to do when you want it to do it. It has tons of grip. Like I said, handles like a touring car. Supremely beginner friendly. So I don't get it. Sure, it may fall behind some in a straight line, but that doesn't make it a bad car. So there seems to be a massive misconception around this RX-8. Yeah, the RX-7 may be technically better, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad car by any stretch. At 1 million credits, it sits on the same level as many of the other fictional GT cars, and I would say it's definitely worth that, especially for people who are perhaps newer to the game or less experienced with GT cars or the driving style of GT6. This car is forgiving and will get you used to driving with those physics, with these kind of cars. If you're looking for a top speed car, obviously not. If you're looking for a car which can flow from corner to corner beautifully, then this is a very good choice to go for technical tracks like here at Brands Hatch, at Ascari, the Nuremberg Ring, etc. But that's it for this episode overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.